Have you ever felt like everyone around you has the wrong idea about someone you love? That they're judging them, underestimating them, maybe even laughing at them behind their back? And then, suddenly, the truth comes out in a way that nobody could have ever predicted? If you've ever been there, if you believe in karma, if you believe that good things happen to good people, then this story is for you. I know you're a good person, and that's why you're here. So please take a moment, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I promise you, this story is worth it. The garden shimmered. Tiny lights, like captured stars, were woven through the ancient trees. The air itself seemed to hum with the scent of 1,000 roses, mixed with the delicate sweetness of jasmine. It was supposed to be perfect. My wedding day. But beneath the surface, beneath the carefully arranged flowers and the soft music, there was a tension, a kind of discomfort. It wasn't the usual pre-wedding jitters. It was something else. Something colder. It was in the way some people looked at him. I stood there, in my dress, a cascade of silk and lace that I'd chosen because it felt like me, not because it was the most expensive, holding his hand. Liam's hand. He looked serene. Almost too serene. Like he was completely untouched by the undercurrent of whispers and glances. His suit was a simple, elegant charcoal, tailored, but not flashy. His tie, a deep, muted blue, was slightly askew. And his shoes, well, his shoes were just shoes. Not a designer label in sight. And that's when I heard it. My uncle, his voice just loud enough to carry, saying to someone in the row behind us, "She's always been idealistic. Marrying a man who probably still lives with his parents." My aunt chuckled, a dry, brittle sound. "We tried to warn her. But you know Serafina. She always has to learn things the hard way." Their words were like tiny shards of ice, pricking at my skin. But the worst part wasn't what they said. It was the way they looked at Liam afterward. Some with a kind of pity that stung worse than any insult. Others with a barely concealed smirk, like they were watching a slow-motion train wreck. And still others simply turned away, as if the whole thing was too embarrassing to witness. Liam squeezed my hand, his fingers warm and strong. "Don't let them get to you, Serafina. Today is ours, not theirs." I tried to smile, really smile, but it felt like my face might crack. I nodded because I knew he was right. I wouldn't let them win. But inside, something was breaking. Then my cousin, Maya, raised her glass. Maya, who had always been the queen of the backhanded compliment. "To Serafina," she announced, her voice dripping with a kind of sugary sweetness that always made my stomach churn, for choosing passion over practicality, for following her heart, even when her head was screaming no. Cheers to whatever this is. A few people laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh, exactly. More of a nervous, uncomfortable chuckle. But it still felt like a slap in the face. Liam didn't say anything. He just looked down at his plate, his jaw tight. I wanted to say something. I wanted to stand up and defend him, to tell them all what they didn't see. But I couldn't. Not then. Instead, I whispered, "Excuse me," and walked out. The garden was beautiful, but I couldn't appreciate it. I walked quickly, blindly, until I reached the edge of the property, near a tall hedge of dark green cypress trees. I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath, trying not to cry. My wedding day. And they were treating it like some kind of charity case. That's when I heard it. A low, rhythmic thumping, like a giant heartbeat in the sky. I looked up and saw it. A helicopter. Sleek, black, and impossibly elegant. It descended from the clouds, moving closer and closer. People started pointing, murmuring. The music stopped. Even Maya's annoying laugh died in her throat. The helicopter circled once, then landed gently on the large, manicured lawn behind the garden. It was so quiet, you could hear the rustle of the leaves. My father, standing nearby, whispered, "What in the world?" The door of the helicopter opened, and a man in a crisp, black uniform stepped out. It was Alistair, Liam's assistant, I guess you'd call him. He walked with a quiet confidence, holding a small, velvet box in one hand and a tablet in the other. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, but it carried through the stunned silence. "Mr. Liam Stone," Alistair announced, approaching us. "The board meeting is ready. They require your final confirmation." Liam, who had been standing beside me, looking slightly uncomfortable, suddenly straightened up. He brushed an invisible speck of lint off his jacket, like this was the most normal thing in the world. Then he turned to me, kissed my cheek, and said, "I'll only be gone for 20 minutes. They're voting on the final merger." "Merger?" My father looked completely bewildered. "Merger?" Liam nodded, as casually as if he were talking about the weather. "Yes. The acquisition of Stellar Industries. It closes today. Sorry for the interruption." He turned to Alistair. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. I need to finish my dessert with my wife." My mother dropped her champagne flute. It shattered on the stone path, the sound echoing in the silence. Maya sat down slowly, her eyes wide and unblinking. And me? I just smiled. Because finally, they were seeing what I had always known. He wasn't who they thought he was. And the best part? He had never needed to prove it. He just was. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. You could hear the distant chirping of crickets. Eyes darted from Liam to Alistair, to the helicopter, and back to me. I stood there in my wedding gown, the breeze lifting the veil behind me, and for the first time that day, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel judged. I felt vindicated. Liam sat down, pulled my chair closer, and invited me to join him. I did, the corners of my mouth curving into a slow, satisfied smile. I no longer had to hide. "Stellar Industries?" My uncle stammered. That's Stellar Industries?" Liam nodded, taking a sip of his water. "Yes. One of the largest tech companies in the world. Privately held until now." My father leaned forward, his face flushed. "You mean you work for them?" Liam's gaze didn't waver. "I own controlling shares. I bought out the founder's stake earlier this year. The board is finalizing the public offering. I'll retain executive control." You could practically hear jaws hitting the floor. Maya's hand trembled, her champagne glass clinking against her teeth. "Wait, what? But you said you were in consulting." "I am," Liam said. "Private wealth management, strategic transitions, legacy investing. My firm is Stonebridge Capital." My mother blinked, her lipstick slightly smudged. "Stonebridge. So, you're not broke?" Liam chuckled, a low, warm sound. Not smug, just amused. Like the answer should have been obvious all along. "No, ma'am. Not even close." Then he turned to me, only me, and said, "I just didn't think anyone's net worth should matter more than their worth to you." I swallowed hard. There it was again. That quiet, unwavering way he had of reminding me what love actually looked like. Not flashy, not loud, but real. The waiter came by with the wedding cake. No one touched theirs. My father suddenly stood up. "Why didn't you tell us?" Liam's voice remained calm. "Because Serafina asked me not to. She didn't want anyone thinking this wedding was about anything but love." Everyone turned to look at me. I felt the weight of their gazes, the stunned curiosity, the shame slowly creeping onto their own faces. "I wanted to marry a man who treated me with respect," I said, my voice steady. "Not someone who flaunted their wealth to win approval." Liam reached for my hand. I didn't hesitate this time. Maya, still looking like she'd just woken up from a very strange dream, stammered, "So, you're like rich? Liam smiled. "We don't really use those terms in my business circles, but yes, you could say that." Someone behind us finally dared to whisper, "That's her husband?" And another, "I thought he drove a beat-up sedan." He did. That was the beauty of it. Liam chose simplicity. He wore no designer suits, avoided the spotlight, never bragged. Not because he was hiding, but because he didn't need validation. Especially not from people who judged worth by the size of your bank account. As Liam rose from his seat to take the call from the boardroom on his jet, my father tried again. "Look, son, we didn't know." "You didn't care to," I interrupted, my voice surprisingly firm. "Clearly, you made up your minds when you saw he didn't fit your expectations." He paused, then nodded slowly. Maybe we were wrong. Liam looked back at them, his expression the same kind, gentle one I had always admired. Maybe you weren't wrong, he said. Maybe you just didn't wait long enough to be right. Then he turned back toward the helicopter, Alistair following, tablet glowing. Everyone watched him go. The man they had laughed at. The man they had pitied. Now, they couldn't even meet his eyes. I turned to my mother and father. You asked me why I never brought him to dinner? That's why. They were speechless. And it was oddly peaceful. As the helicopter lifted off, the blades whirring like the fading heartbeat of a moment none of them would ever forget, I stood and walked slowly back inside. My guests parted like the Red Sea. No one laughed now. No one whispered. Because when you stand in your truth, when you love someone for who they are, not what they have, the world notices. And sometimes it lands in a helicopter just to prove a point. The helicopter disappeared into the clouds, leaving behind a silence so profound, it was almost deafening. I stayed outside for a few moments longer, letting the wind lift the edge of my gown, my fingers still tingling from Liam's touch. When I finally stepped back into the reception hall, it was as if the room itself had transformed. The colors were the same, the lights still twinkled, but the expressions, those had shifted. Gone were the smug glances, the arrogant smirks. All that remained were wide eyes, twitching mouths, and a collective effort not to choke on their own pride. And suddenly, they didn't know how to treat me anymore. My cousin Maya, who earlier had avoided introducing her fiancé to us, now walked over like we'd always been the closest of confidants. Oh my God, Serafina, why didn't you tell us? I mean, seriously, this is like Hollywood-level drama. I smiled politely. It wasn't about drama, Maya. It was about love. She tried to laugh, but it sounded strained, high-pitched.
Right.
But still, dang, girl. My Aunt Charlotte leaned in, whispering, I always said you had good instincts. A blatant lie. She once told my mother that I lacked taste because I didn't chase after doctors or lawyers. I remembered. Everyone remembered. Liam didn't need revenge. Their own words had become it. I made my way to the bridal table, sitting in the chair Liam had vacated. My mother approached, slow and hesitant, like she was finally unsure of her place in my life. You could have told me, Serafina, she murmured. I turned toward her, meeting her gaze. And if I had, I asked softly, would you have loved him more? Or just pretended to? She didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. The value of a man should never have been a dollar amount. But to them it always had been. Until now. He's kind, I continued. He brings me tea when I'm sick. He listens to me ramble when I can't sleep. He takes care of his employees like their family. That's who I married. Tears welled in her eyes, but not the kind you'd expect. These weren't tears of guilt. Not really. They were tears of loss. Because in that moment, she realized she had judged a treasure and found herself lacking. Your father and I. She started, her voice breaking. We just wanted you to be taken care of. I know, I said gently. But you didn't trust that I could do that for myself. Or that someone like Liam could. My father stood nearby, pretending to adjust his tie, but I could see him listening.
His posture had changed.
Shoulders slumped. No longer the proud patriarch, just a man who had misjudged deeply and publicly. A few more guests came by. Some tried flattery. Some offered awkward congratulations. Most just stayed quiet, realizing that anything they said might sound like backtracking. It was almost funny how quickly admiration replaced disdain. And all Liam had to do was be himself. I pulled out my phone, my heart fluttering as a message came in from him. Merger approved. Coming back to celebrate properly. Tell them not to eat all the cake. I laughed under my breath, but my hand shook. Because beneath all the glitter of this unexpected twist, something deeper stirred inside me. All those years of doubting my choices, second-guessing my heart because others didn't approve, they didn't matter anymore. Liam hadn't just married me.
He had chosen me.
Despite the noise, despite the pressure, despite the whispers. And now, the people who claimed to love me most had to sit with the reality that they were the ones who needed to change. Kindness was what Liam had shown me. It's what I wanted to show them. But kindness wasn't weakness. Kindness could be the most powerful and lasting form of strength. By the time Liam returned, the entire tone of the wedding had shifted. Gone was the hushed gossip, the judgmental stares, the fake smiles veiled in pity. Now people stood straighter when he walked past. They smiled too wide. They offered their hands too quickly. You could almost smell the desperation to fix what they had broken just hours before. Liam, of course, handled it with grace. The kind of grace that comes not from wealth, but from knowing exactly who you are. He took my hand the moment he stepped back into the reception hall, like nothing had changed. Because in his heart, nothing had. He wasn't suddenly more powerful. He wasn't suddenly more desirable.
He had always been that man.
The world was just catching up. I miss the speeches, he whispered, leaning in with a smirk. Did your cousin get any funnier? I laughed. She choked on her own toast. It was poetic. He grinned, then kissed the back of my hand like it was the first time. The crowd watched closely, maybe waiting for him to slip up, maybe hoping to figure out how someone like him ended up with someone like me. But they missed the real story. We didn't marry to prove anything. We married because we already had. As the servers brought out slices of the triple-tiered cake, my father finally made his move. He approached the table with deliberate steps, clearing his throat like a man about to give a TED Talk. But what came out was softer, almost uncertain. I owe you both an apology. My fork paused midair. Liam looked up, his expression unreadable. My dad continued, I judged you before I knew you, Liam. I let assumptions cloud my heart. And I. He glanced at me, his eyes heavier than I'd seen them in years. I hurt my daughter in the process. I blinked. That part one wasn't expecting. I was wrong, he finished. Liam didn't rush to forgive. He let the moment settle, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Then he nodded once and said, Thank you. Not dramatic, not condescending, just sincere. I hope, my dad added, that maybe we can start over. I didn't say anything right away. There was so much I wanted to release. The pain, the anger, the years of trying to make them proud. But I looked at Liam, at the way he was choosing peace over ego, kindness over triumph. And I realized we didn't need a dramatic confrontation. We needed healing. I'm open to it, I said finally, but it has to be real this time. My father nodded, and for the first time, I believed him. Later that night, when most of the guests had gone home and the fairy lights twinkled like lazy stars above us, Liam and I slow danced alone in the garden. His hand rested on my waist, my head tucked against his chest. It was quiet. No music, no audience. Just us. You okay? He asked, his voice a low rumble. I nodded. They saw who you are today. I whispered. He held me a little tighter. All that matters is that you always did. I pulled back to look at him. Thank you for everything. For letting them figure it out on their own. He smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair from my face. They needed to learn the hard way. And you deserved to see them learn. We stood like that for a long time, swaying, breathing, healing. And in that moment, under the soft hum of distant laughter and rustling leaves, I realized something profound. My wedding wasn't just about marrying the love of my life. It was about shedding the weight of everyone else's expectations. It was about choosing my own path, even when no one else could see it. It was about love. And that love, it landed in a helicopter. 2 weeks later, we sat on the balcony of our new home, barefoot, sipping coffee as the city's skyline glittered in the distance. The wedding had come and gone, but its impact still echoed like distant thunder in family group chats and hushed conversations over brunch tables. They didn't talk about the flowers or the venue. They talked about him. The man they thought was a loser, the man who made them all pause, reflect, and question the way they measured worth. And me, they talked about me, too, but differently now. They said things like, she always had good intuition, or she was smart to keep it quiet. The tone had changed, but I didn't let their newfound respect define me. Because I had already learned the most important lesson. Validation that comes late isn't validation at all. It's just people catching up. Liam was in the kitchen making pancakes. Yes, the Liam Stone, multimillionaire, boardroom titan, helicopter pilot, now wearing pajama pants with tiny foxes on them, humming softly while flipping flapjacks. "Why are you smiling like that?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder. "Because you're ridiculous," I said, laughing softly. "And also perfect." He carried over a plate of golden brown pancakes, setting it before me with a theatrical bow. For the woman who didn't care about my money, but still ended up with all of it. I laughed. That's one way to summarize our love story. But deep down, we both knew it wasn't about the money. It was about the moments, the values, the quiet things. Like how he texted me before every big meeting, just to say, "You've got this." Like how I'd sit on the bathroom floor beside him when his anxiety flared up after high-stakes calls. Because yes, even men with helicopters feel small sometimes. Like how we promised each other, during one midnight walk long before the wedding, no matter how loud the world gets, we'll listen to each other first. That was the vow that mattered most. The public now saw Liam differently. He was profiled in business magazines, invited to podcasts. One reporter called me the wife who stayed silent through the storm. Another tried to romanticize the whole thing, calling it a real-life Cinderella story. But I wasn't rescued. I chose. And so did he. Months later, at a quiet family dinner, just us, my parents, and Liam, my father poured him a glass of wine and said, with careful gratitude, "You turned out to be the man we didn't know we needed." Liam simply replied, "I was always that man. You just didn't know how to see him." And my mother, her eyes glassy, placed her hand on mine and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we didn't deserve it." It didn't erase the past, but it softened it. That night, I found a letter tucked in my purse. It was from Liam. He had written it the night before our wedding, but never gave it to me until now. It said, "If they laugh, let them.
If they doubt me, let them.
If they walk away from you because of me, I'll build a world so safe, so real, that you'll never need to look back. Not because they don't matter, but because you finally know you do." I cried. Not because I was sad, but because this man, this so-called loser, had rewritten everything I thought I knew about strength. It didn't live in revenge. It lived in quiet integrity. It didn't roar in the face of cruelty. It endured, then rose. So, if you ever find yourself standing in a room where no one believes in the person beside you, don't shout. Don't fight to convince them. Just hold their hand tighter. Because sometimes, love's loudest answer comes in the form of a helicopter landing on a lawn full of doubters.